He's a blustery sort of blowhard who has a lot of self-assurance, and it really is not too handy. I think he's a lot of fun because he gets himself in a lot of trouble, gets out of it, but not the way that he thought he was going to get out of it.
I would start it right here, okay? And as he comes in to hit him, I would pull back like this.
Got it.
Okay?
Yeah.
The movie is Big Trouble in Little China, directed by John Carpenter. Best known for the horror classic Halloween, the critically acclaimed Escape from New York, and the Oscar-nominated Starman.
Big Trouble in Little China is my 11th film as a director, and it is a action, adventure, comedy, kung fu, ghost story, monster movie, everything you can imagine. This story takes place at modern day times in a big city in the United States, and what we do with the audience is start them in reality and slowly take them into the fantasy. And it's an incorporation of kind of American sensibilities and Chinese mythologies.
It all begins when the Lords of Death kidnap the fiancée of Jack's friend Wang Chi, played by Dennis Dunn.
I don't think I'm so much a sidekick as we're kind of like two guys together, like in the tradition of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Because constantly you could tell we like each other, but we're always going, what are you doing? Come on.
Also at Jack's side is Chinatown lawyer Gracie Law, played by Kim Cattrall.
Hey! Sorry, I'm just thrilled to be alive.
Yeah, sure. Let's go.
We always do get along, but we're just two completely different kind of people. He sees things and approaches things from a very physical point of view, whereas I approach things from a very mental point of view. I don't understand why he can't just think, or he can't just realize how it's going to work.
Sorry.
So there is clashes and, of course, attraction involved with that as well, as life will have it.
Joining our trio in this action-packed adventure is fashion model Susie Pye as the kidnapped fiancée. Stage and television actress Kate Burton makes her feature film debut as an eager but inexperienced reporter. Victor Wong portrays the mysterious magician Egg Shen.
Cheers!
And James Hong is his mortal enemy, the most feared figure in Chinese legend, David Lo Pan.
The 2,000-year-old man, that's the David Lo Pan that has traveled through the history of China over 2,000 years, looking for this girl with the green eyes, you know, and just keep looking, and he's looking constantly for... It gets kind of tired after 2,000 years.
Very quiet, please. Mark. Action.
Rigorous physical demands were required of all the actors in order to make their way through the treacherous world beneath Chinatown.
1, 2...
Every day on the set, Dennis Dunn practiced martial arts in preparation for fight sequences against creatures both real and unreal. The fantastical creatures and visual effects were created under the watchful eye of Academy Award winner Richard Edlund, who reached into the world of Chinese mythology for his inspiration.
Action!
The Chinese culture is one of the oldest cultures in the world, and they have an enormously interesting background of demons, myths, and so on. And since they've had a number of thousands of years to refine all of this, you know, we're getting, in the 20th century, we get the distillation of millennia of Chinese fantasy.
What's happening, Wang? Chinese standoff. A what? Don't make a sound.
To ensure authenticity, a large cast and crew of Asian Americans were assembled, offering expertise ranging from martial arts instruction to knowledge of Chinese legend. The most unpredictable characters from Chinese mythology are the three storms, thunder, lightning, and rain. A powerful trio who packed some unusual weaponry, and who presented the greatest challenge to costume designer April Ferry, who also created James Hong's elaborate robes and Susie Pye's traditional wedding attire.
I just wanted to kind of create something that was authentic looking, but that was still really a fantasy. And the most challenging one to make was the bamboo armor, because it is authentic, that bamboo. But to figure out how it must have been done years ago and how we could do it now and still have the actor be able to move in it. And each actor would come in and they'd do their martial arts kicks, and we would adjust the costume to their needs.
But I think the biggest challenge of all is the overview of all this, is to pack all this in a little compartment, juggling all these elements, the elements of fantasy and comedy and action.
It's got suspense and thrills and chills and all that, but this is, to me, basically a good, fun time. you get your $5 worth. You go in, lay it down, and come out, and I think you'll come out smiling and you've had a good time. A hell of a wild ride.
85, it was kind of our golden period because we didn't have a lot of competition at that time. So there was a lot of activity. And John Carpenter was, he was a veteran of effects movies, and he'd done movies with rubber and with various effects, so it was easy to communicate with him. But a big pièce de résistance actually was Lo Pan and his glowing head, you know, which was very interesting. I mean, and James Hong is a great actor. He's this great character actor. We had to cast his face and then make his whole face and make it transparent so that we could light it from within and you'd see all the veins. And so a number of situations culminating in the scene where he lifts his hand and then his fingernail comes out. And of course, the light that was inside the head was so hot that we had to shoot it quick because it would start smoking. I mean, it had like about 1,000-watt bulb inside the head, you know, or maybe brighter, I can't remember now. But one of the interesting units in the movie was the big floating eyeball monster, which had all these eyes, and that thing must have cost $100,000 to make that thing. I mean, it was just, it had, you know, all these eyes, and it had little bladders for making the cheeks pulse, and the mouth would open, and it had expression, you know, you could, and when the mouth opened, there's another eye there, and acrylic castings, polished, and then the irises were all done with paintings. In order to shoot it, we put it sticking out in front of a little blue screen, which had a hole in the middle, and then behind that were about 15 people with levers and with their hands in there moving things around, and the eyes were blinking, and so it was extremely complicated, you know, and it's all worked out and choreographed so that, you know, you're out in front calling numbers, and then the people on the levers and everything that are operating, the eyes blinking and the cheeks and the expressions of the face are watching video monitors from a camera out in front to keep track of what they're doing. You know, so that was a technique that we used, you know, quite a lot, and going from. We set the shop up on Ghostbusters, and Steve had been there through then, Steve Johnson, and so he wound up being the head of the monster show. And then we also had the scene where we swam through the corpses, and so we built all those corpses in the rubber shop, and for years actually we had a I don't know who I mean, when I kind of sold everything off, you know, I don't know where all those went, but the corpses were we had a rack of them up above the model shop that was just, you know, lined up with corpses from various movies. The sewer monster was extremely complicated, and it was like this huge, ugly thing, kind of a half fish, half dragon. And the thing is that for the amount of work that went into it, that was one of those things that got about a half a second. I mean, it was like you only saw that thing for maybe, you know, what number of frames. It was expected to be involved in more. The suspension of disbelief that, you know, that you were able to do, and you can still watch King Kong and suspend disbelief because you get caught up in the story and you forgive the fur flopping around and the kind of, you know, the stop motion-y action. I mean, my wife bawls whenever she sees that movie. She says, "Oh, I don't want to see that again." The Wild Man was like another one there was an enormous amount of preparation. I mean, punching all the hairs in every pore, you know, and you saw it just for a moment on the end of the movie. The rubber was really good. Had a really good prosthetic crew. It was like about 15 or 20 people working, I think at least, and maybe more at one point. Behind the scenes, Cimino had just done this movie which had angered the Chinese community in San Francisco to a fever pitch, I think. And so there was this real paranoia about doing a movie about Chinatown. And the set was just unbelievable. You felt like you were in Chinatown, and it was really amazing. You couldn't believe that you couldn't go in and order something or buy some herbs at the herb shop or whatever. And they brought a bunch of people from Chinatown down, had this big sit-down dinner for them to kind of assuage their fears that this was not the movie that was going to make the Chinese community look foolish or bad or anything. And that was one of those things where we kind of, because there was so much stuff in this movie, and the budget was really tight, because it was kind of a so-called low budget. It was about a $20 million budget, I think. So and in '86, for a lot of effects, that was cheap. And our effects budget was I think it was $1.83 million. It's a very tough business to make money in. I mean, it's just so fun to do it as a practitioner, you know, and I got involved in building the company because I needed that optical printer and that weird equipment that you couldn't get anywhere, so we had to build it. And then, of course, there's the big fight in the big room, you know, which, and of course we didn't have any wire removal in those days. I think there were some wire shots, and we had to take some wire out with Vaseline in a couple of shots. And then it culminates because these guys are shooting their light, you know, because Egg Chen is doing his number, and then Lo Pan is doing his number, and then the light crosses, and then all of a sudden they become these mythical Chinese, you know, knights, you know, with big swords, and they're fighting in this kind of fog. That scene, we hadn't really figured out how we were going to do that scene yet, or what exactly John wanted for that one. We set up like some platforms about 4 feet up, so we could shoot low, and then had some Orcon projection lamps that I had laying around, and we were using those to backlit, and then we smoked the whole room and backlit the smoke, and then had the guys just in front of each one of the lights, and then we had operators that were trying to follow, you know, them to keep the shards, you know, going towards us, and then so that when they would hit with their swords, then they'd step away from the light, and then you'd get this big flare. Anyway, but that's all you need, you know. Sometimes the most memorable effect shot in a movie is only half a second long. I mean, in those days, I mean, to compare that with where we are now, I mean, it's sort of like the blacksmith era. I mean, it's like there was a completely different kind of ingenuity required to solve visual problems than it is today. Although it's still filmmaking, you know, I mean, and still the same kind of cheats and all that kind of, the kind of things that you do to get away with certain things, you still use that. And so the basic filmmaking, if you understand filmmaking, that's going to stand you in good stead. But one of the problems, I mean, today is that a lot of the people who are doing work on workstations and you know, which is the way everything is being done now pretty much, don't have a sense of filmmaking. You know, they haven't seen King Kong, or they haven't seen Citizen Kane, or you know, I mean, they don't, I mean, not that you have to see all these classics, but I mean, there's so many lessons to be learned about filmmaking from that. And there's so many tricks to making a shot work that come out of a real strong background in filmmaking that's kind of missing to some degree.